Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, distinguished ambassadors, dear friends, it's indeed an honor and pleasure to be here today and to participate in the opening session of this very important conference. So welcome to Georgia, welcome to Batumi. This is indeed a very important happening for us. The fact that such a distinguished audience gathers in Batumi is of course very important because it gives us an opportunity to share with you what is happening in this country. And visiting Georgia, I believe, is the best way to discover this country. Any country basically, but including Georgia as well. So you're here to see what's happening in this country, and a lot of things have happened in the last 8 years. We're talking about economic cooperation and economic dimension of security. And one lesson learned from Batumi is that basically the best facilitating factor for economic development is freedom. Because you are today in the region and in the city, which 8 years ago had very different political environment, which was kind of owned by local feudal. And 8 years ago, Batumi was very different. It was gray, it was just typical post-Soviet city. Today it's very different. And I believe the major factor which contributed to this change is the spirit of freedom which you can feel today, and spirit of transforming the country. And a lot of economic transformations took place in this country in the last 8 years. 8 years ago, Georgia was a typical country with typical Soviet bureaucracy, with economy which was a mixture of corrupt and Soviet system. 8 years ago, any entrepreneur, in order to take any license, had to wait for months and months, had to go to tens of different bureaucrats and different ministries. And at the end, the only recipe was giving a bribe. We changed the entire philosophy of doing the business, making the business in the country. We introduced the single window principle, which means that everything is done behind one window, and we went further, introducing so-called houses of justice, which is the single space concept. Any person, public, goes to a single space which is called house of justice, and they can get any services they need within that single space. And this is not only technical transformation, but this is first of all psychological and moral transformation of the public service in this country. 8 years ago we started from the system which was heavily corrupt. And I remember first days of fight against corruption, very difficult and very unpleasant. I was member of previous parliament where we had to arrest few members of parliament because of corruption charges. All of them were from parliamentary majority. Some of them were our friends and our partners during the revolution. And those of you who are in the parliament, you probably understand what it means when you have to vote for cancelling the immunity of your own colleague and your own friend within the plenary hall. But we did it few times because it was a very important lesson and example that there are no longer rules which can be broken. There are no longer people who can be tolerated if they are part of the corruption. And all in all, corruption is punishable. And that was a big change in the society which during the 70 years of Soviet rules got accustomed to the corruption, and it became kind of social habit and usual way of behavior. So when we started this fight, it was highly unusual to discover that corruption is crime, corruption is punishable, and even if you are member of parliament, even if you are minister, even if you are governor, you will get punished for that. That was the beginning of the big transformation of this society. And 8 years after we started this transformation, we reached the point where we stand today. Of course, I cannot say that there are no problems in this country today. There are a lot. We still have low per capita income, and our economy is still small, although now very healthy. Unlike economy which we had 8 years ago, Georgian economy today is absolutely healthy. It's still small, but it develops in right direction, and what we need now is time for this transformation and changes. We still have people in need. We still have high rate of unemployment. You will still see a lot of housing in this city and other cities which remain from the old times and need fundamental repair and reconstruction. But you will see also signs of changes, big signs of changes. And these are the changes happening in this country. And this changing happened because of all the economic reforms which we undertook. And among those economic reforms, minimizing the government's involvement in economy, minimizing the bureaucratic power to influence the entrepreneurship and economic development was the key approach which we took. And I believe it generates results. There are still problems in this country because if one compares Georgia with Eastern European countries, we had the same level of per capita income in 1989. But then Central and Eastern Europe continues to develop. While we had to face all the problems, we had to face civil war, we had to face conflicts in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, we had to face criminality, devastation, corruption, and failed state which we had. And as a result, in this early 90s, Georgia lost almost 75% of its economy compared to 1989. You can understand what it means when a country loses 75% of its economy. So in 2004, after Rose Revolution, we had to start everything from the very, very beginning. And what you see today is the country under construction. It's not only city under construction, because you will see a lot of construction projects around. This is country under construction. And of course, it's sometimes a little bit inconvenient to live in the country under construction, because you will see a lot of things happening around. But on the other hand, that's the best thing, to have this feeling that you are building your own country and you transform your own country. This is the great feeling, and this generation of Georgian politicians have this luxury to have this feeling that we are constructing our own country. And this is something really, really very important. And I know that many of you intend to come back in October to observe Georgian parliamentary elections. And the important point why these elections matters is not how the parliamentary seats will be distributed among the parties. Of course, I care a lot about my party, but this is not the main thing why I believe these elections are important. The main thing that these elections will give answer to the fundamental question how Georgia's development will continue, whether we will continue all the reforms which we started, or this course and modernization will be questioned and revised. This is the fundamental question, and this makes these elections very important. So I call you, dear colleagues, to be here, to observe, to attend, and to be participants of Georgian success, to be participants of Georgian elections, because Georgian elections are part of Georgia's democracy. We are striving here not only for economic reforms, but we are striving to strengthen Georgian democracy, to make it more mature, to make it better established. And elections are an important step in that direction, so I welcome in advance all of you willing and able to come back as an observers in October, because it will be an important occasion to prove Georgian democracy and to strengthen Georgian democratic system and democratic credentials. And of course, it's out of the need to say how much importance we attach to the cooperation within the OSCE and specifically OSCE Parliamentary Assembly as well, because the parliamentary diplomacy is getting more and more important. And I spent quite a number of years in the foreign ministry, and when I was in foreign ministry, I was always a little bit irritated when MPs used to be engaged in diplomacy, saying that what politicians have to do in diplomacy, I mean, that's the job of diplomats, that's our job, and whenever they intervene, they just do wrong things. Now I understand how wrong I was myself saying that, because now I understand how important political and parliamentary diplomacy is, because that is really the clue which unites the acting politicians from different countries. And having networks like we do have today is something very important. It's very important to understand each other, it's very important to know better each other, and it's very important to help each other whenever need this kind of assistance from each other. So parliamentary diplomacy is getting more and more important, and of course parliamentary assemblies and OSCE Parliamentary Assembly plays a very, very important role with that regard. So this leads me to my concluding point that this is very important organization, very important gathering, very important topic, and very important people. So what else is left to me except saying that you are most heartfully welcome to Georgia and to Batumi. So welcome, and I hope that this conference will be a good working opportunity, but I also hope that it will be a little bit more than working opportunity, because discovering Georgia is not only discovering what kind of economic reforms we did, and discovering Georgia is also discovering culture, identity, heritage of this country. So I hope you will have an opportunity not only to work, but also to discover a little bit of Georgia in this next 2 days. And you know that we Georgians are proud of our wine, not only of our reforms, but our wine as well. And you may know that more than 80% of our wine used to be sold in Russia, on Russian market. But after Russian embargo, suddenly Georgian wine production lost 80% of its market. So since that, we believe that obligation of all our friends is to help us and to compensate the losses which we got from the closure of the Russian market. So I hope that your friendly contribution to Georgian economy will be important. I hope that you will discover this country, which is really a friendly country. And I hope that after these 3 days spent here, you will feel home and you will have this sense of nostalgia to Georgia when you go back to your country. So welcome again, and I wish you very fruitful and very nice stay in this country. Thank you.